Hello YouTube, and welcome back to Retirement for Life. So as I mentioned on my last video, very important to keep your equipment well maintained. So I've just finished sharpening all the chainsaws. They're all set to go, and I am hitting 300 hours on the Kubota here, so it's time to do an oil change on that. We'll get that done and then we can move on. So the plan is going to be to go ahead and finish those last 3 logs of the new logs that I have up on the log bunk. So that's going to be empty. And then we're going to go back into the bush and tackle that pine tree again. Now it was pretty badly damaged the way it came down through the trees, and I'm not sure how much is actually going to be useful, which would be a real shame, because when it came down, a lot of the branches were broken off, and they broke off deep back into the main trunk of the tree. So it's made quite a mess. And part of it is just too big for my tractor to even do anything with, never mind the sawmill. So the idea is to just get back in there and continue tidying up, and I'm going to get what 8-foot lengths I can and pull them down probably to the bottom of the hill. And then from there, we'll drag them back. And maybe we might be able to get a little bit of wood out of them. I hope so. Anyway, a lot of work ahead, so let's get at it. Well, it's another day. Looks like a beautiful one. But wait, what's that sound? Or missing sound? Yes, the generator is off. It's Saturday, so 7 days since the power outage. And yesterday, late afternoon, our power came back. And it wasn't too long after that I got a couple of phone calls. Neighbors are back. So the cleanup continues. And boy, it was devastating. As you saw from some of the pictures on my last video, there was a lot of people who suffered terribly from the storm. We got off really, really lucky here. The storm that came through just kind of skipped the edges of our area, so I'm pretty relieved about that. So today, now that the oil is changed on the tractor and all of the chainsaws are good and sharp and ready to go, we're going to get back to work again. Boy, it's nice to hear the birds again. Well, that's a big one. It's going to be fun positioning this and getting it cut. But we'll get started on it. All these knots from the limbs that we're on are of course an issue for this, because these are good sized branches that we're on here. So you've got really, really condensed grain at those points. That makes it tough to cut through. And it also would end up with weak 2x6s or 2x4s because of the knots in it. So as I mentioned yesterday, this log is probably just going to be strictly for siding for the board and batten. So we'll get it leveled out, positioned, and start cutting. Well, there we are. We got that gnarly pine all cut up here. I did quite good. I've got 7 boards and 17 battens. So I had to go a little more on battens because I am falling behind. I've been concentrating a little bit too much on the boards. So that's a really good turnout from that log. I am very pleased. So we're going to sweep these all down and stack them with everything else over here in the drying tent, and then go for lunch before we start on those last 2 logs. Well, I've come down to have a look at this spruce tree before going any farther on the pine, only because I'm kind of hopeful that this won't be too hard of one to get out. So what I'm going to try to do is cut it up past where the damage is right here and cut it around here, and hopefully I'll cut from the bottom, and hopefully it should just drop down then, as long as there's enough left in this cracked part to hold that together. So we'll give that a try first and see how that goes. So I'm going to knock the limbs off of this, of the lower part, mark out an 8-foot length, 8 foot plus about 4 inches or so, and cut that off first. Well, that was pretty straightforward. Well, there we go. That's not too bad. I got 5 pretty decent logs. Well, one's pretty small. I might be lucky and get a 2x6 out of it. If not, I'm sure I can get a 2x4 out. But the other 4 are a decent size. So I learned a little bit about dealing with that and the issues with splitting, because I did lose about a foot off of the second log that I cut because I let it hang too much and it split. But, you know, we learn as we go along. So now that we got logs down there cut and ready to go, it's time to check out the log skidder. So there's the skidder waiting to go. So it is fairly light and obviously fairly short, so I can take it down into that tight trail, disconnect it, and then turn it around on its own, and then turn around the ATV. Then I can hook my logs up and pull things out. Okay, we got everything hooked up and ready to go. We're gonna go get the log skidder dirty. Well, there's the first one out to the staging area. That went reasonably well. I sure would not have been able to pull it out any other way. Got to work on my technique a little bit, that's for sure. But we'll get it figured out. Well, I would have to call that a baptism by fire. That was some very gnarly trails to pull those logs out of, almost axle deep in a couple of spots, but it worked, and it worked really well. I'm very pleased with it. Well, guys, I think that's going to be it for today's video. Got all my logs up here, and I think it's time to go in and find a cold one. So, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you out on the trails the next time.